What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the channel and to the fourth episode in the Recurve boat build series for the Fleetwood Timber Ridge Recurve. So I wanted to spend the bulk of this episode talking about my arrows, the tune, the choices I made in these arrows, and why I made some of those choices. I did a little bit of stuff off camera and a little bit on camera, so I'll apologize if I didn't get a ton of the tuning process for these arrows on camera, but I figured I would explain a little bit more about it in more of this fashion rather than trying to videotape it all and cover it as I'm doing it. So basically what I did was I started out with a bear shaft in the rough tuning process. On the back of this bear shaft, you see I added some masking tape. I kind of went over the reason why in episode 3 to equal some of the weight that you're getting from your fletchings on the backside of your arrow, because that does affect your tune, believe it or not. So I added the tape and got the bow what I felt like was close. Really close. I left it just slightly weak while doing the rough tune. So then whenever I got my fletch shafts back, I wasn't going to get caught with my pants down and end up with arrows that were totally wrong. So I started out with this, got it really close, at least based off video. I felt like it was pretty close. Upon receiving my fletch shafts and starting the micro tuning and the got a bug flying in front of the camera. No, I'm not just waving an arrow from me. I'm trying to get rid of this guy. But I went ahead and started the finished micro tuning process with the fletch shafts. And what I discovered was that with the fletch shafts, I was flying so close. I mean, and it might still be just a touch on the weak side, but it's so that I can't really tell. It's so close that I opted until I configure this bow out a little bit better and making sure that I'm shooting it correctly. I changed some stuff on my form whenever I went over to this rig. I'm trying to be more expanded and work on my my form and my lineup and making sure that everything is true and I'm getting full expansion, especially to be able to get the scapular engagement that I need for a back tension release. I'm still trying to kind of get used to some of that, so there might be a little bit of inconsistencies from that because I'm not used to being so open whenever I shoot. I shot just on the razor's edge of being too collapsed, too short and compressed. I left this arm a little bit bent, kind of coming from the compound side, I guess. I left this arm a little bit bent and was still able to stay in line that way, but I'm much more expanded, much more back into the limbs now than I was before, so I'm still kind of getting used to that and really been working on my back tension release. So that could be affecting the flight of the arrows a little bit. So it was so close, I decided to stop. And I would rather stop a touch on the weak side and be able to heat these tips up and pull it back out, cut them down again if I need to later, take a 1/4 inch off at a time. But for now, they're close, and I wasn't anticipating on them being that close. I figured I was going to be taking 1/4 inches off even still once I got the fletch shafts back, but that ended up not being the case. So the final tuning process for this setup got cut a little bit short, so my apologies for that. But enough on that. I'll roll into what I ended up with. What I ended up with was an overall from knock, back of knock to insert, 32.5 inch arrow. So at 10.1 grains per inch, that's 300 and 25-ish grains, you know, in that ballpark, and just the shaft, not including the knock, the fletchings, insert, and tip. I'm thinking that I ended up right at about that mark that I told you last time that I was shooting for, around that 540 to 550 mark. We'll see. I'm gonna put these on the scale and see what they actually end up being once I get my hands on the scale. But on to the components. Like I said, I ended up being 32.5 inches overall length. For fletchings, upon studies that have been done recently, and I probably don't have to tell a lot of you where those studies came from, but I'm going to anyway. Cody Greenwood at Trad Lab, shout out Cody. He's a good dude. We've talked a little bit over social media, and he's been helping me out with some stuff. But after tests, proper testing that has been done by Cody in adverse conditions, being crosswind, rain, proved that the most forgiving in all hunting circumstances, or just outdoor in general, fletching configuration turned out to be a shorter feather or fletching, and in a 4-fletch 90 configuration. It handles the wind better, it handles the rain better, because in, you know, really not even theory, it's more common sense. The traditional archery community always kind of assumed that a 5-inch feather was going to straighten your arrow out faster in the rain and in the wind. Well, that's just not the case. The more feather, the more surface area that's going to retain water, and it's going to be harder for that arrow to straighten itself back out, because it's got more water to shed than smaller feathers or fletchings do. And as far as the wind, less surface area on a shorter feather or vane, more surface area on a longer feather. So it's just, it's like really kind of common sense if you really, you know, give it some thought. But I ended up going with trad vanes from Arizona Archery. I am trying to bulletproof my setup to be for hunting, for the purpose of hunting specifically. I want it as bulletproof as possible, and if I can hunt in the rain and be able to hunt in any adverse conditions, you know, some wind, rain, whatever, I want to be able to do that, and I don't want the limiting factor of feathers, or the potential limiting factor, should I say. I'm not knocking feathers. I shot feathers on my prior setups. The setup I just got done shooting was 4-inch shield cut feathers, so, and I loved them, and as long as it wasn't absolutely pouring rain, I really didn't have bad experiences with them. But even something as simple as shooting and, you know, hitting some wet grass or something like that is enough to lay those feathers down. So it's just something to consider. And for me, just based off the tests that have been done, and I like facts, I like tests and statistics to help me out where possible, proved that for me, hands down, 3-inch trad vanes and a 4-fletch 90-degree configuration was going to be the end-all be-all for this setup. So that's what I went with, and they fly excellent. I'm extremely pleased with them. It's my first experience with trad vanes. I hadn't used them before this. I knew they existed, and they're really starting to make some waves, and these are going to be a game changer. They really are, and I hope everybody else jumps on the bandwagon with them eventually, and is willing to at least give them a try. So they've, like again, 3-inch trad vanes in the 4-fletch 90-degree configuration. So enough on the feathers. Moving on to what I'm running on the end of my arrows. I'm just running the standard inserts on these, like 15 grain inserts or whatever. I'm not real concerned about a ton of arrow weight, or a tip weight, sorry, on the ends of these, because I was going for a heavy overall arrow anyway. So I've got plenty of weight on the front of this arrow to steer it. I was shooting in a little bit of a crosswind today, just a light crosswind. It was enough. It was pushing my feathers over, or pushing the tail end of my arrow over just a skosh, at 20 and 30 yards. But the front end of the arrow is flying true. So I'm reassured that I'm running a more than sufficient amount of weight up front on these arrows. So 15 grains for the standard insert and 200 grains on the points. These are just the field points, but I have been running, and I ran them last season, haven't got a kill with them yet. I'm anxious to. For broadheads, I'm running Bear Paw archery products out of Germany, running their German Jaeger 200 grain, 2-blade, double bevel broadheads. Solid, they're not vented or anything like that. At first, I bought these based mostly off of price point. They are severely, in my opinion, on the cheap side, so it was almost like, I wonder how well these are even gonna work. Some of the broadheads I've used in the past that I really liked, I paid up to $50, $60 for 3 broadheads. So I'm not above paying what's necessary for a good broadhead, but from everything I've been able to see and read and find, these broadheads perform very well. The longevity, they could be a one-kill wonder, but we'll see. I'll see how they perform. I've had lesser broadheads be able to be used a couple of times, so I have high hopes for these, and from everything that I've seen online, they seem to perform really well. And you may have to touch them up every once in a while, but that goes for any broadheads. They need, the importance is that they're sharp. One other thing that I wanted to mention, that the study that was done by Cody Greenwood at the Trad Lab and the Push Archery also showed, before you guys hate on me too bad for my fletching configuration or anything like that, because someone out there is going to have to throw a fit about something. The choice you make on your fletchings, whether it's the material, feathers, or plastic, 4 fletch, 3 fletch, 5-inch or 3, it really doesn't matter if your broadheads aren't spinning true. So broadheads that spin perfectly are extremely important to me, and all of these spin well out of the package so far, except for one. Out of a half dozen, one of them was wishy-washy. I think if I spent a little bit of time at the bench, maybe doing some, trying to flex it back into place, I think it would probably be fine as a backup arrow or something like that. But for, I think, $35 for 3, something like that, 30, 35 bucks for 3 of them. They fly true with my field points. They hit where I'm aiming all the way out to 30 yards easily, so I can't really complain. And yes, I do shoot with my broadhead. So I mentioned before, as far as the choice on the arrows, the Easton Carbon Legacies. These are the 340 spine, 10.1 grains per inch. The reason I went with these is because compared to some of the other arrows in this class, they had a higher GPI than some of the other arrows that were, a lot of them around like the 9.3, some of them even 9.0 GPI in the 340, 350 weight class, or spine class, sorry. And that wasn't really going to be sufficient for me. I was trying to go for having a long arrow that I could maintain weight, which is what I ended up with. Like I said, I ended up with a 32-inch arrow, or 32.5, sorry, and was able to maintain as much weight as possible, because obviously as you're cutting length off your arrow, you're losing a weight, overall arrow weight, and I was trying to maintain overall arrow weight. Like I said, I have sufficient FOC, I have sufficient weight up front. What I really wanted was more weight overall, and I really believe that's what I ended up with. And not only that, these Carbon Legacies, they look really good. I mean, they're a sharp arrow. I don't know how well you're gonna be able to see, but Easton did a really good job on these arrows, and I really like them. I have a great experience with them. I shot them on my last setup, shooting them on this one, and I'll probably shoot them for the foreseeable future. But that should really pretty well cover everything that kind of went down in the tuning process. I'll throw some shorts, some little slow-mos in after this, so that you can kind of see how they're flying now and kind of what I ended up with. And if you go back and watch episode 3, you can see more so of some of the bad arrow flight that I started out with. You know, I started out obviously really weak with a stock length arrow, and I really was able to neck that down. And I also kind of go over how I ended up with as far as the trajectory side of things, and my knock high and low, how things ended up there. Some of that stuff was gone over in the rough tune in episode 3. I really wanted to focus more on the arrows in this episode. But I don't really have a lot more that I can talk about on the arrows. Like I said, I wish I could have narrowed things down a little bit better and spent a little bit more time on it, but I guess if things work out well and go smoothly, that's nothing to complain about. But I probably won't try to get these specific arrows any closer than they are now, because I'm pleased with where they're at this time. But they're flying good, they're flying true, and right now I'm pretty confident with them, and this bow really is shooting where I'm looking. Even though I do gap shoot, any of you guys that shoot gap or anything like that are either new to it, or the guys that have been doing it for a long time, you guys will understand. Doesn't take long shooting gap for anything inside of really 20 yards to turn right back into being instinctive. I don't intentionally shoot instinctive. I can't. I was never able to. But once you've shot for long enough inside that 20-yard range, you really end up falling right back into that instinctive category again, because I don't inside 20 focus a whole lot on where my arrow tip is. I just kind of know where it's going to be, and the picture looks right to me, and I line my arrow and my eye up just like I would shooting gap, and I let it fly and it hits where I look. So all of you will eventually get to that point if you shoot gap, and if you shoot enough, shoot as much as you're supposed to be hunting with one of these things and be efficient. But that's the arrows. For the next episode, probably the last episode in this series, I'm going to take this bow out to a walk-through range and kind of put it through its paces and get some shots out to longer distances, and really start working our legs out and seeing what this bow can really do, and if I have any discrepancies with it or whatever. But so far I'm really pleased. It shoots well, it shoots fast and quiet, and my whole goal with this whole series was to prove that you can buy a $300 bow, do the right things with it, put the right things on it, and perform well, and that, you know, really at the end of the day, the equipment gets you a long way, and it helps tremendously, but it also comes down to you as a shooter. I have really good days and I have really bad days, but so far this rig's lights out, and from what I've kind of seemed to figure out, my point on distance is somewhere still around that 30 to 32 yards mark. So I can't really be upset about that, shooting 47 pounds at 29 inches and hunting whitetails almost strictly. That's perfectly fine with me, and that's more than adequate. So anyway, thanks for watching this episode, guys. Episode 4. Like I said, there'll be one episode after this one. to get this out and put it through its paces. I want to thank you for watching the series. I hope you guys have all been able to learn something from it. I know that I have. I've enjoyed it, kind of working through this process from the beginning. And if you guys haven't already liked this video and subscribed to the channel, I ask that you please do that and help grow this channel so I can maybe put some more content out there and help some other guys out that are, you know, new getting into this like I was, and help them navigate the waters as best I can, because it's an awesome sport. I love traditional archery enough that I sold the compound to do it. I've fallen head over heels in love with it, and I would love to get more people with some stick bows in their hands and help out any way that I can. So anyway, like I said, thanks for watching, guys. Be sure to hit the notification bell so you don't miss whenever I drop more episodes or more videos after this one. So like I said, thanks for watching, and shoot straight.